Welcome to Toxic Superfoods Exposed.
Captivated by the allure of a vegan lifestyle,
I decided to be a raw food vegan.
Indiana believed he had found the path to wellness.
Carrot, apple, celery, beet, spinach was Jay's #1 juice. I was drinking that twice a day, every day for 20 years.
This journey soon revealed its darker side.
I ended up smashing my meniscus, tearing both rotator cuffs.
His quest for solutions led him to uncover the truth about oxalates.
Hi, I'm Indiana Sosh on Instagram, born and raised in Indiana on the grounds of a mental hospital. My dad was the x-ray technician at the hospital. He ran the department. At that time, they also did EEGs and EKGs, and so I was born into this. By the age of 3, I was going to the hospital, seeing how the hospital works, interacting with the patients. I would go there very often, be curious about the body and how it worked and how people's brains worked and why they were here and we weren't in the hospital and things like that. So I was always very curious. I'd been an athlete also from a very young age, started playing baseball, actually learning how when I was 3. And I finally ended up playing baseball at Arizona State University. And when I left high school, I went to Arizona State to play baseball, played there 1 year, and realized I wasn't big enough to be playing in the pros on what they were looking for at that point. So I focused on my degree, which was theater. I had done plays in high school and started doing plays in college. And when I got to LA, 21 years old, needed a job. So I was walking around looking for a job and I saw a sign on this thing called Vitamin Quota. I had no idea what it was. Never been in a health food store of any kind, because now I'm in California, to where they were about the only state that even had health food stores of this type. And so I go into there. They just needed a clerk to check people out on the cash register. And I said, hey, I'll take the job. I started taking a book home every night, reading these books that were on the shelf in the store. And the first one I read was Jethro Kloss's, it was Encyclopedia of Herbs or something. And I came out of that book going, how come I haven't heard about any of this? Next book I took home was Fresh Vegetable and Fruit Juices book by Dr. Norman Walker. And I'm like, this is interesting. Making juices out of a carrot, making juices out of a spinach to increase absorption and acting like a multivitamin. So that made sense to me. 6 months along, I had probably read every book that was in that store. I decided to be a raw food vegan at that time. I heard this guy just being very animated about juices. He was juicing carrots, apples, beets, spinach. I didn't know even that stuff could go through a juicer. So I worked my way to the front, and I was just mesmerized by this guy. And his name was Cordish. And later on, he would end up being known as Jay the Juice Man. He would try and educate people through juices and why you needed juices, therefore you needed the juicer. And he would sell juicers that way. He sold me. I wanted a juicer. I wanted to use Fresh Vegetable and Fruit Juices book I had read 6 months before that juices book, and that all made sense to me. I didn't know how the juices were made. Now I have a juicer. Now I can make juices. I'm going to be the healthiest person in the world because now I'm a raw food vegan, and I need a type of multivitamin with a higher absorption from the juices. So I thought, perfect. So I laid down $429 on this stainless steel juicer, and that was it. Then you would get your juicer a couple months later. And I said, okay, great. And I'd sit and wait 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. So finally, 6 months, I called him. I said, hey, where's my juicer? So then 3 months go by, no juicer. 3 more months go by. It's been a year now. No juicer. I'm working in the health food store, helping people with nutrition, private consultant, working on being an actor, trying to. Finally, he said, okay, I'm getting a supply this weekend. Come down to the Pomona Fair. And I'm doing juicer demonstrations, selling juicers. So I said, okay. So I showed up. By now, I had a year and a half of nutrition education by reading books and helping people with their nutrition. I picked up my juicer. I'm standing there watching him do his juicer demonstration. After the demonstration, he gave me my juicer and we talked, and he apologized that it took a year to get my juicer, and we were talking back and forth about different nutrition approaches. He ended up leaving, going to Phoenix, did one of the first infomercials that was ever done on TV. I think it was the first one. And so he went on to become famous as the Juice Man with the Juice Man Juicer. I ended up managing 3 different health food stores in Los Angeles while I was doing the acting thing. While I was in the stores, Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw wrote Life Extension. It blew everything up for vitamin supplementation, and the term life extension they came up with. And so Twin Lab, who I was working for, decided to design all their formulas around the book. So the combination of the popularity of the book and Twin Lab having all the formulas and me being the sales rep, it was just like a perfect combination. And so that went on for a year until I was fired for disagreeing with some protocol. So I went on, ended up leaving LA, always brought my nutritional counseling with me wherever I went. I was helping people. It only took me 3 years to drop being a raw food vegan because it was just breaking my body down. I continued being an athlete. I was running 14, 15 miles, training for marathons. I ended up smashing my meniscus, tearing both rotator cuffs, decided not to be a vegan anymore, and came back to fish, eggs, meat. So that healed me back up again. I got my strength back, and I was still always juicing, using juices as my multivitamin, being that it was the most natural multivitamin. I was playing basketball, playing volleyball, I was skiing, the whole thing, till one day I just hurt my back really bad playing volleyball. You know, basketball and volleyball, both jumping sports, are very ballistic on your joints. I had grown up in Indiana, playing my whole life there. Finally, I hurt my back, which felt like a pinched disc, and I ended up on my back for 2 weeks. I couldn't move. I seemed to have both spinal stenosis and compressed discs. I'm like, well, how's this? I'm only 38 years old. Long story short, I end up getting to videos and YouTubes on phones about 4 or 5 years ago, and I didn't really know how to operate it. One of the first videos I saw on YouTube was Paul Saladino, and he was just getting started. And the reason I noticed him and listened to him is because he reminded me of me like 20 years before this. And he is describing how he was just like me. He was a raw food vegan. He backpacked the Pacific Crest Trail, which a few years before that, I had just got, well, not the Pacific Crest Trail, but the John Muir Trail on the Pacific Crest Trail. I did for 3 weeks. I knew where he was coming from, and being a consultant for so many years, I thought, I'll listen to this guy a little more. And he's talking about the carnivore diet. And so I thought, that's interesting. I don't think it's real, but let me hear what he has to say. So after he got done, I was like, all this kind of makes sense. 3 weeks later, he's back on YouTube when I looked at it, because I had looked at him once, so now the algorithm's giving me him again. And lo and behold, who's he interviewing about 4 years ago? Sally K. Norton. And talking about oxalates. Now, she didn't have a book or anything, so she was just talking about her problems with oxalates. And they were that was starting to ring a bell with me in the injuries that I had, as far as my joints and arthritis and damage. Here she is talking to a guy that is responding just like I would, and she's giving information that I'm like, how come I never heard of this or read a book on this in the past years that I had been studying this? I'm like, what is this magic that Sally K. Norton is talking about? So I then just started watching every video that she would come up with. And she wasn't coming up with the videos. She was being interviewed by the people. And she was kind enough to do these interviews because I know people don't get paid for these interviews. I thought, wow, she's doing a lot of interviews. There's a lot of very interesting information, I think I will try this, and I will pull away the handfuls of almonds I was eating, and I will pull away the spinach juice and the celery juice and the beet juice. Carrot, apple, celery, beet, spinach was Jay's number one juice. I was drinking that twice a day, every day for the 20 years. And so here I ended up with all these joint injuries and now arthritis coming on because I'm still an athlete and trying to get through it. So I started incorporating what Sally was saying without a book to follow. And so I had to watch all these videos and rewind. And what did she say here? I go, why haven't I heard of this or even thought of it? And why hasn't anybody else heard of this or thought about it? I mean, yes, everybody knows about kidney stones. Everybody knows that most of them were calcium oxalate stones. Now I just put together why, when I was in my third year of juicing, I passed the kidney stone. I'm doing a lot of heavy backpacking now. And after my trips, my joints are killing me. And I can only do like, at the most 3 weeks at a time, and then I'm just racked up for a month. And so I started following her in this whole process, and even bringing the non-oxalate foods with me, which for me were dried blueberries. I would bring hard-boiled eggs, protein powder that was made from beef, and jerky, and that was it. And so my backpacking trips started getting more and more comfortable. I'm starting to question, I'm 2 years into it, and I just got on Instagram, and I'm starting to question, why am I not having dumping? I was the oxalate king with all my juices from Jay the Juice Man and my handful of any nut I would eat, especially almonds. And so why am I not dumping? So I started doing methylene blue, 5 milligrams every day for 2 weeks, and all of a sudden, I had a huge rash up the side of my body, and it wasn't shingles or anything. There were no lesions or anything like that. It was just a huge rash, and I've never gotten a rash in my life. And so I just continued day after day after day with this, and the rash got worse and worse, welts and everything. Then by the 7th day, all of a sudden dried powder started coming out of it, and little tiny crystals. And so it all came together for me now. The previous year, I couldn't make it to the middle of the Matterhorn in Switzerland because my joints were just racked by the time I got up there. I just could not do it. Now, that was last year. Now, this year, I went back to the Matterhorn in September, somewhere in there. And I said, I'm not going to let this thing beat me. So I did it again. I got to the top of the Matterhorn. My joints got me up there. They were flexible, no pain. And at the top, I just went.
So thanks, Sally K. Norton, Toxic Foods. Order the book.
Then that's why I'm here now, because she thought I'd have an interesting story. And basically, my story is the same one both Paul Saladino has and Sally has. And that's why I like them getting together, because they were my original exposure to this. Sally, thank you for putting all your work together for us also, not just you. And I thank you for all your work and just talking to schmucks like me, trying to figure all this out. So now I'm trying to help, my private clients now in that manner. So everybody go out and get Toxic Superfoods and use the information. You'll be better off for it.